Folks, we are live. Welcome to Talking Crit. I am just one of your many hosts today, Eric Tenkar. No big, huge particular order, but stage right, Bad Mike Battleotto, best known as Satan.
Hello.
Our other regular co-host on the bottom of the screen, holding the show in his hands.
I am not the Atlas of this show.
Well, I'm certainly not. With the one and only Jim Kitchen. Uh, going to the middle squares, we have Jeff Jones. If you have followed the tavern, Jeff did the layout for Torchlight. And stage right, Zac Goins. I think I did I interview you back on the podcast like 5 or 6 years ago.
You did, yeah.
All right. I'm not losing my mind. This is the Pex era I'm talking about, Mike.
And poor Zach's reputation has never recovered yet. So.
Well,
it's been an uphill climb since then, and I just kind of crested back, and now we start back at the bottom. Yeah.
Well, all right. You see, there's a flow to thing. There's a flow.
Yeah.
So we've brought Jeff and Zach on because there was a Kickstarter for Shadow Dark Visions. Now, I'm going to bring this up on the screen in a little bit, but I want you
to come on, go straight to it. This is the most metal show we've had in months. If you don't put that on the screen, you're a big girl.
No, I was just going to say I wanted their pretty faces, not our pretty faces.
Oh, my God. Just go straight to it. Show them how awesome this is. Put it up there. Jesus Christ.
First of all, before we go there, I found out about these guys because of this little bit.
That project
I hit
the one we're here to discuss.
I hit the wrong button, Mike. Well, that stuck.
Okay. Well, we're definitely trying to promote these guys. I'm saying no. I started back in these Gary's
right, hold them up,
great little fanzine, just all kinds of info in there, and so this is where we had Jeff on the show ages ago, and I said, what's this guy done? He said, well, he did my stuff. There's this thing called Gary's Appendix. So I think he'd already got done 1 and 2. It's like, okay, well, I'll check this out. And I was so pleased by this. I love the feel, the look, the old schoolness of it. I mean, it's just amazing. And so I started backing these, and I believe I have all of them. I don't know what number.
Well, we just finished 7, so we'll be rolling into 8 here for too long.
But so anyway, so I like this guy's stuff. These guys do some really good work, and so I'm getting excited about this.
Hold the splendor on your screen.
That is.
Look at that. That is a thing of beauty. Look at that. Sorry. I can only get so excited. I apologize.
I know.
But look at this, right? This is the best part of all of this, right? Let's just talk about the numbers. With 11 days to go with a $1,000 goal, you're at 24/6. Sweet Christmas.
Nice.
How many people would kill to be in this position with a week and a half to go? Jeff, Zach, this is spectacular. Oh.
Yeah, this definitely exceeded all my expectations. I'm not sure about Zach's, but I go into these projects. Because every project speculation. We've never done anything for Shadow Dark before, and so every time you do it, you just go into it not knowing exactly what's going to happen, especially for a fairly new product line.
But clearly, I mean, it's found its audience. It's resonated within that audience. You've got astonishingly solid numbers on this. The artwork, I'm an artwork guy, and really and truly, I mean, you've got the book on the left, The Tower of Six, and then Dark Visions, and really and truly, this adequately describes a lot of my dating career. But really and truly, so how did this start? What's the elevator pitch for Dark Visions? What's your elevator pitch for this?
Well, I'll let Zach answer that because he's the one that wrote this, is largely responsible for most of the work that's done here.
Okay, cool. Dark Visions is all the cult information you could possibly want for your Shadow Dark game. It's got player options. It's got a whole bunch of creature stat blocks. It's got a whole bunch of different cult domains, and it's got adventures. So I was just on another show talking about a Pirate Borg thing a couple days ago, and what I told them is the same thing I tell you, which is when I sit down to think about what I want to do for a new system, the first thing I ask myself typically is, what does the system need? What does it have? What does it not have that would really benefit the GM and really fit the vibes? And when I think about Shadow Dark, I'm like, well, we've got a lot of cool monsters, and a lot of other people are creating really cool monsters, but there's maybe an argument for other humanoid things in the dark. And there's a lot of gods and deities already in the Shadow Dark core book. So like, let's marry two of those things together, and let's just hone in and get really specific, and just fill it full of cult stuff, which is fun anyways. It's one of my favorite tropes of D&D adjacent stuff is occultism and spells and rituals and dark magics and nonsense.
And so when you see this sort of empty space that you want to fill, what is this in the book that you are the most proud of? Like, what is it where something just clicked and came together and you thought, oh, like we've got a tiger by the tail with this?
I don't think it's probably not like anything that's necessarily a revelation, but when Jeff and I were talking about it initially, one of the things that I didn't want to do was make a book that only worked if you were playing in like the Shadow Dark home setting or in a very specific setting. And so for a while before we really dove in, it was, how do we do cults? It give you a lot of cult varieties without just naming the cults after, the gods of Shadow Dark or the demons or whatever. And so I think we really started to gain momentum once I hit upon going back to like domains, like a cleric domain, but thinking about what domains made sense for the Shadow Dark, and which ones could, like, you could pick one domain like Ash domain or the Archon domain or Nightmares domain, and were there domains that could work for different gods if you interpreted them in different ways? And I think the answer ended up being yeah, and I think it was fun to contextualize it in the Shadow Dark system where certain domains like Ash maybe wouldn't make as much sense in another system, but in this one it's like, oh, this is perfect. This feels like exactly what there would be. So,
and when you've got this written, who are your artists for the entire project? What's your greatest hits list of folks who've touched this? Because that art is incredibly striking. Like, it really it segues straight into everything that we all know and love about Shadow Dark.
Well, strangely enough, the most of this art for this is I really did not expect this to. My initial expectation was much lower, so this was done very economically. So I found that main image was on there's a place called Vector Garden. I've got a lifetime membership, and so we've kind of modified that. Yep. We've then the rest of his clip art is not clip art, but is art. Yeah, stock art from Toby Gregory,
yep.
John Bilodeau. My daughter's doing the maps, and there's also a little Dean Spencer in there. So I guess it goes to show that you can put out a really nice looking product with art that's out there that's affordable, either through Drive-Thru RPG or through, I think, the skull and the octopus for the Tower of the Six came from, I think that's Adobe stock art. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
I mean, it sort of looks like William Dafoe, frankly, but
yeah,
there's a William Dafoe-esque quality there.
I think that was the other nice thing about where we started with this project, because I think we had mucked around with the covers a lot before there was even a lot of content in the book. So that was the fun part, was like, go out and look and kind of be inspired by art that you find, that's available, and then write to that to some extent. And that was really fun to do actually this time around.
Oh, it's just stunning, absolutely stunning, right? And I always love it when we have somebody on with a project like this, because then I look in the comments and somebody will be like, pledged, backed, pledged, backed.
Yep.
And that's right, that's the reward of all this, because more than anything else, you got a week and a half to go. Do you have some internal goals? I mean, it's already surpassed what you sort of thought it was going to be. And now it's gotten to a sort of point where you're just like, my God, the momentum, we're going downhill on a freight train and there's no brakes. What's your sort of next steps on this? I mean, do you feel like we need to put a little more in, stretch goals? What are your thoughts?
Oh, as far as this goes, I don't do stretch goals for.
I love you. You're my favorite.
So right now, Dark Visions, I do have a proof copy ordered from Mixam. So I expect there's going to be some modifications to that. Now the next part is trying to determine where we're going to get the hardcover printed. But for right now, all I really care about is getting everything right and being able to deliver a quality product in a good time.
Right.
Yeah, Jeff's definitely, like, I work with a lot of people, but Jeff is definitely like the one who gets as much stuff done up front as possible, and then we don't overload things on the back end. So,
right.
I mean, the fact that Jeff already, he was coming in behind me as I'm finishing up and turning in drafts of adventures or whatever. Jeff's coming in behind and sourcing artwork or additional art pieces and doing layout. So, I mean, I think both of these books are laid out. Dark Visions is ordered. I think the danger a lot of times that Kickstarters come into is they have a higher level of success than they expected, which is awesome. And then they feel obligated to add to their development process. And that can work out really well, and it can enhance the product, but it can also potentially really delay the project or incur additional expenses that you hadn't considered or budgeted for.
The scope creep literally just becomes a title.
I was going to say
takes over.
Yeah, I was going to say you guys are typically. I looked at your Gary's Appendix. Those typically get about $7,000-8,000 like clockwork? I mean, you can count on $7,000-8,000 coming in. This one's already up to 24. Did that give you any extra expectations? Like, whoa, it looks like we got quite a few more eyes on this than we do our the Gary's Appendix, or is it just like business as usual with you guys?
Well, I guess in a sense, you mean as far as changing, and I guess in what ways? I guess you could.
Well, it's going to be a bigger project, obviously, than the Gary's Appendix in terms of you have more eyes on it. And you're going to have more. You're going to have more shipping. You're going to have more.
Yeah. So
right?
really, the biggest so what I'm looking at, the biggest thing could potentially be if we get these printed overseas. So that's something I've not done, and so that's probably the biggest thing. And also the scale of shipping is going to be bigger. But I've been doing my own fulfillment here for the last almost year, so we're pretty well prepared for that. I mean, the question is, I mean, we got two things going on, and Zach and I were talking, earlier today, is we've slotted 11 projects for this year. Not sure if we're gonna get them all done. So, but now, the idea is that this is pretty successful, and talking to Zach, it's like, obviously it's like, kind of what's next, but Zach's got a full schedule, so he needs to make decisions on what he's going to put his time towards. And I need to also, determine, what makes sense. But I think we have determined that there is hunger for this, and even if things don't fund to this level, there's still an opportunity to provide quality content to the Shadow Dark crowd.
Right. Well, and again, you're just building on success. That's one thing leading to another. I think you're absolutely right. There's a lot of creators, God love their hearts, in an effort to make people happy. Stretch goals start getting tacked on, and then scope creep takes over the project. And then 3 years later, when nothing's fulfilled, people are asking what happened. And the very simple is we had a very clearly defined project that then failed a spawn check, grew tentacles, and is off in the wilderness somewhere. And it's very
and what's
hard to
hard
see.
is sometimes I think people make the error of putting their stretch goals way too far out, and it never gets close, and it just looks awkward,
Right.
And then, but I think the other thing is sometimes people will know what they're going to achieve, and they will then do stretch goals. They'll like, I don't want to say it's artificial, but they've already planned on X number of advancements because they figure they're going to get it. But
artificial is a fair word. So
Yeah.
a lot of times.
Yeah, I think that's very, yes.
But I think what Zach has mentioned, for going that direction, is the idea is that the nice thing about stretch goals, if you do it, is it takes people on a ride and a journey. So there is a certain marketing plus to doing that as people start seeing things ticking up, and it does help build excitement. So I don't think stretch goals are a bad thing. It's just that for what I'm doing and for my projects at this moment, I'm not doing stretch goals.
Well, at some point, I hope to see patches
I also-
with the Dark Visions. I mean, that just screams 1980s denim jacket. Get
Yeah.
the big patch put in the middle of
Oh
it,
my
right?
God,
That's
yeah.
just spectacular.
Very, yeah. Well, I was interested. One of the things that really got me going with you guys is that when I finally got into Gary's appendix, you guys are really diligent about putting all your stuff that you have. You're able to buy it. If you buy any one thing of yours, everything else is available, and I think that's really, really good marketing issue. So I would advise anybody that was interested in this, buy it. If you want to, just get whatever stretch, get whatever you want. Get the POD, get the hardcover, whatever. But check out, when you check out, you'll check out all the other stuff you guys have written. It's a pretty hefty amount of stuff in your guys' library at this point.
Yeah, it's and we're hoping to keep expanding. So it's I don't have any plans of slowing down. So it's been.
Yeah, I didn't realize you'd done 16 projects so far. I was like, wow. Yeah, you're at this point, you're pretty much a Kickstarter veteran.
It's the curse of success, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go at the bottom. There's all the stuff.
Yeah.
One thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, and that's.
Yeah, and it's been very. I mean, having the support of backers. I mean, it's really been. It's been a wonderful thing, and the kind comments and support. I mean, there's not a lot of accolades. There's not a lot of whatever, but we do get comments. I get comments about people's appreciation, or I just actually had somebody. I didn't tell you this yet, Zach, but somebody today just remarked about the random mines table, abandoned mines table.
Oh.
That was in this issue. They just gushed about just how great that was, and
That's nice.
this last issue was their favorite. So anyway, thanks, Zach,
Yeah.
for that article.
Well, plus you guys are getting
I'm
rich.
quitting my job
too.
next month. My wife's not happy about that, but
Well, press,
I have profited thousands of dollars.
the thing is, I do know that while there's always a potential, you can never expect this, because I don't know, because my son's asked me, he's like, what do you attribute this to? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I think we produce a good looking product and at the right time to the right audience, but there's no guarantee we do something similar 8 months from now that'll even do close to this.
I think that there's definitely, in the Shadow Dark community, there's a hunger for supplements, right? The truth of the matter is, like, I know they're doing their own Kickstarter in March, but that was just announced last month or so, at least officially. And there is definitely a drip feed of third-party creations, but nothing that's like hefty, like a full book typically, like this, like a full hardcover. So it's definitely been that thing of like, the Shadow Dark community is hungry. It wanted things, and there hadn't been a huge Kickstarter in the last several months for it. So people hadn't already spent their monthly budget or their quarterly budget. And I think that really worked. One of the things that Jeff and I talked about before launch was, like, we launched with, I can't remember, Jeff, it was like a little over, like almost like 525 or something like that followers pre-launch. And that was with almost no marketing budget spent through that time, and that is completely abnormal for both me and you. Like, we're seeing a very simply gained following ahead of time just by posting in the comments, showing some work in progress shots and stuff like that. It became immediately apparent, like after a week of doing that, we had like 300 followers, and it's like, all right, this is going to be bigger than what we thought it was going to do, because we're hitting at the right time, and this is the product that people, at least a product that people want there, which was nice.
Well, I think it's the system that people are really being drawn to. And I mean, Greg Christopher is a member of my gaming group, and Greg produces a lot of Shadowrun. Oh my God, Shadow Dark material. He does
Yeah.
settings, and he did he did Shadow Sun, the Dark Sun clone or simulacrum. And I noticed from watching and talking with him that once you have your first success within that market, you're now a proven entity to those customers.
Mhm.
So I think if you come out with something else after this, and this lands as well as it looks like it's going to land, you're just going to do better and better. That's just my take on it, because that's what I've
got a
seen.
couple of thoughts, right? I think you're hitting a lot of the base points, but one of the things that defines the Shadow Dark community, right? Number one, they want quality. I think there are a lot of people that don't necessarily inherently understand that. There are going to be companies that jump into the Shadow Dark space with digest-sized products that are of lower quality, and they're going to wonder why they're not selling. And it could be poor art, it could be a poor adventure, or poor whatever, but it's going to land with a big resounding thud, and it's not going to go anywhere. But the Shadow Dark community is very clearly dialed into, they're willing to follow a strong, artistically well laid out and well thought out and well executed project, and they're going to throw money at it. And I think a lot of people haven't grokked that yet. And I think, you are in the absolute sweet spot of, we have a project, it hits all those notes, every single one of those notes. It's at a perfect time where your project is going to end well of anywhere from 8 to 9 weeks before the next project from Kelsey launches. You have a proven track record, and truthfully, like, I really have qualms about anybody that doesn't have a track record on Kickstarter. I'll take my chances, but you got to be able to show me that you've done other stuff outside of Kickstarter. And so you've got a track history of great projects. You've got a track history of quality in quantity, which is hard to manage and hard to stick that landing. But I think, I mean, really and truly, you nailed it. That somebody who loves Shadow Dark, like, over my shoulders, there are big shelves that people want to fill with high quality Shadow Dark projects. And unfortunately, right now, that much shelf space is what we've got. And every time we can add something to it that's just going to keep expanding that's of that same quality, people are just going to throw money at it. And we're not talking about an egregious amount of money, right? That's the other thing about your project that's just so insidiously delightful, is that it's not $100 project. It's not $150 project. It's not a $75 project. It's $50 plus shipping. And that hits the sweet spot that, if I have to spend X or Y or Z, I don't have to sit and debate this for very long. I can just pull the trigger on this, and I'm in, and I haven't bankrupted myself. And this is like 6 coffees at a Starbucks. I could cut that out of my life, and I've covered my costs on this project. And that's one of the reasons
that's one of the reasons I love these appendixes, because I'm kind of on a fixed budget right now. I really can't spend a lot on Kickstarters, but every few months I can drop, $20 on something that's going to give me a ton of enjoyment. And it's as much as a lunch out is at this point, to buy a Gary's appendix. And the value that these guys put out is amazing. I mean, for what you get, everything that I've gotten so far, Fane of the Fly God was really good. I mean, there's just a bunch of stuff out there. I've gotten my money's worth and more, I think, out of it.
Now, I'm a little suspicious, because Zach looks like he's in a basement, right? He's in the dark, and he's in that space. But Jeff, it's an embarrassingly clean space behind you. And
Yes.
first of all, I'm a little worried, right? Is this like a background or is this really your office? Like,
No, it's this
this is
mouth.
unsettling. This is a kind of evil I am not used to, Jeff.
And that there is all my product that I use for fulfillment. So I
Wow.
have this
Nice.
is
Boy, are you going to have almost 600 pieces of joy in your future.
well, I've told my wife, yeah, because if I'm going to be buying, because that's just it. Because right now, if I'm going to go overseas, I'm going to buy hardcovers. I need to. And this also has a potential for going into finding a distributor. So now I may be buying an extra.
Well, and I would throw two things out, right? Before you go to the distribution model, if you go to the distribution model, you're going to lose a lot of money.
Well, yeah, that's just right.
And really and truly, like I would throw this out. There's so many companies that make this mistake of either going through distribution or they make the mistake of going to a fulfillment house. And really and truly, like as long as you can still keep that in-house up until the very last moment, I just would counsel you again and again and again to just try to retain it in-house, try to keep it in-house. Yes, like don't get me wrong, your wife is going to be like, you get to park on the driveway until we get rid of the pallets in the garage.
Right.
But you have control over it. You have ownership over it. You can make sure things get done the way you want.
No, I used to have other people do the fulfillment. I was a former I'm a world of game design refugee.
Oh, well, your scars run deep, my friend.
Yes, that's a balance scar, yeah.
It wound up okay for me. I thought I was going to make a trip down to Texas to get my books, but I didn't have to. But I came within 2 days of making an emergency road trip but my point is no, I'm going to do fulfillment from here on out. But there may be an opportunity through like Goodman Games to be able to sell a few hundred books or whatever. I just need to. My main goal is I'm not going to go crazy, and I don't want a super amount of inventory, but if I'm going to buy overseas and I'm going to get quality books and get them at a reasonable price, I might as well go ahead and with this, it seemed like it should have a longish tail that I could be able to.
And your cost per copy is going to drop significantly to the point that again, right, the profit margin goes up so much more dramatically. And again, this is what gives you the foundation, that firm foundation to go forward with additional projects, because you're turning this over, you're moving these out. Yes, honey, we've got to move the Honda around the pallet for another couple of weeks, right? But that's just it's key. So,
hey, Zach, I've got a question for you real quick. I was just running through your bio here, and I didn't realize you've written for so many systems. You've done Mothership, OSC, Mortboard. What's your favorite system to write for?
Oh goodness, that's a great. That's a hard question. Probably the fair answer is whatever one I'm currently writing. Like that's the pat answer though. Probably.
I have a hard enough time when I write stuff just writing for BX, and I'm looking here. I'm like, Marvel Multiverse, Mortboard, Mothership, OSC, Pirate Board, Vast Grimm's, Whitehander. I'm like, oh, how do you remember
love
all
that.
the rules?
That's the meat and potatoes for me. For a long time, I did a how to play series on YouTube, doing like walking people how to play these games. And when I went to conventions, I was teaching people how to play different games. So like one of my favorite things about a system is the different rule set and what they're doing that's interesting. And inevitably, once you've ran it at conventions or you've done a how to play or you've done whatever I end up doing for it, I have an itch to like do something in that space to add to the pile of enthusiasm. And so typically what you find, I think, on my end is my writing comes in kind of as like the stamp on the end of or during the middle of an experience that I've had with that system. So right now I've been running for 6 months. The Free League put out the Moria campaign for Lord of the Rings. And I took that and ported it all over into Shadow Dark. And I've been running that for 3 different groups for the past 6 months. And so, Dark Visions kind of came in the middle of my enthusiasm for that particular system. But, shoot, it'll be whatever. I really like Pirate Borg, of course. That's my day job as Pirate Borg, so I'd have to give them a lot of props for making a great thing. But yeah, Pirate Borg, Shadow Dark. I'm really obsessed with 100 Dungeons right now, which is an OSR hack system that's on drive-through. That's really cool. Some really great exploration rules, hex crawl rules, stuff like that. That I think is doing a lot of good work.
I'll have to
So-
check that one
so
out. I'm not
That's
familiar
In
with it.
play testing this, what was the most gonzo moment where something just went so sideways wrong and you're just like, oh, this is wonderful?
That's good. I think that you plan for a lot of shenanigans, or at least I like planning for player shenanigans when I'm writing an adventure. And we were just play testing through Adventure 2, and in Adventure 2, I kind of had this idea that players were going to go in and they're trying to like infiltrate an area that is swarming with cultists. And I had this idea that they're not going to go into the first door they see, interact with the first people they see. Like they're going to try some scouting, or they're going to try some tomfoolery around the edges or whatever. And in this current play test, like the first thing that they did, they're like, great, place full of cultists. We're just going to room 1 clear, move on room 2 clear. And just like the most direct nonsense route. And it's kind of the lack of tomfoolery that ends up being weird to me at this point in OSR games, more than the
These are the
ridiculousness.
victims of 30 and 40 years worth of bad DMing.
Right. Yeah.
You know, we take the challenge head on, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what is this? Why there's no flaming horse carts, there's no monkey suits. We're
That's
just like
Open the door, throw
approach-
fireball, close the door. Moving on.
Yeah, exactly. Like, wow, this is wild. Yeah.
I was in a game a year or so ago where we were going through G1, G2, G3, and at the Hill Giant setting, somebody decided to cast the god awful Stone to Mud, and just everything's collapsing in on itself. There's giants flailing in the mud, like it's just a bloodbath. And the poor GM is just like, okay, so right, and it's the first time he'd ever had somebody at the party where somebody looked at one of the pre-gens and was like, oh, Stone to Mud, I'm going to shoot the entire building, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. That's perfect.
Right? Craziness. So you're trying to figure out if you're going to get this printed or not overseas, but like, what's your pie in the sky? When would you love to have this start fulfilling? Like 6 months from now, a year from now? What's your sort of thought on
Yeah, I mean, probably realistically, if we do overseas, I would imagine probably 6 months. And normally I do fulfillment for all my Kickstarters within 8 weeks of a Kickstarter ending.
Right.
But if we go that route, that's not going to happen. And I'm not even sure with what the current state is of the supply chain.
And the best part is if you can stick that landing, you got it in time for the convention season, right? You've got it in time for possibly Origins, most definitely Gen Con, and you can get it out there in people's hands before the end of summer, which is just fantastic. That sets you up for a great kickoff into the fall.
Yeah, but I don't have any. I don't sell at those conventions, so I'm just
There's
a normal dude.
somebody. There's got to be somebody. We'll find this person for you, right?
That's right. Yeah. If you're out there and you want to carry Shadow Dark books at conventions,
Yeah.
Well, yes, and I think that's the other thing is I think Shadow Dark snuck under a lot of people's radars for the convention season last year, and that will not be the case this year, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be the case at all. You may very well find yourself in the enviable position of being able to negotiate one single person who has the right to sell your products at Gen Con, and I think that would be fabulous, right? That helps you tremendously.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point there. I didn't think along those lines. It's very easy. I mean, I've got a full-time job and trying to get these done. It's nose of the grindstone. But I think taking a little bit higher level view, I didn't really think about in those lines as far as having somebody sell product at conventions.
Well, and the other piece of it is, though, that you just want to make sure that you give them the exclusivity for the shows, so that if somebody else is like, hey, I got a big discount. Nope. No.
Yeah.
This is the agreement. take it down. And
Yeah.
Jim Con's very good about that.
Yeah.
They won't
I
let
think-
other people pull that crap. Sorry, go ahead.
I think on Kickstarter, we said September for physical delivery. And I think a big part of that was, I think up until we always project out several extra months just because there's no reason not to.
Sure.
But I think that also came from like, all right, if we order from overseas, is this going to at least be possible? And I think the answer is, yeah. Like, I mean, that's definitely cutting close, especially, you know, depending on what you're doing, where you do it. But I think the other part of it is like Jeff said, like Jeff's really, really good at, he's kind of puzzle solved the how to get international backers on board, because he does a lot of like domestic print runs for stuff that have come before, like Gary's Appendix. There's a lot of like, we'll do a several hundred print run here in the States, fulfill that way. But then, you know, through Lulu or, you know, Drive Through or these other places that Jeff's experimented with, we're able to make it really feasible for people in Germany or people in Australia to back the book and get the print on demand version that's shipping right out of their home country. So I think on that side of it, one way or another, I think a huge chunk of backers will be getting this book in the time frame that Jeff has talked about, and that we talked about, the 8 to 12 weeks or whatever will be pretty feasible on the POD side. And really it's just going to be about, you know, if you have to wait till September, it's because you're getting that like step up in quality that comes from a full print run.
Well, and I think that's your most, I mean, I beg of people, I beg of publishers to understand the thing you should be an uncompromising bastard about is your quality. You know, if you're willing to just let it be sort of slipshod and fall apart, or, you know, one of the things that Mike said earlier, and this is so true of your products, right, is that I'm a tactile guy, and the feel is quality, and people do not understand that, right? I struggle to get people to understand that 60% of the people you deal with every day need to see it visually. You know, there's another 20% that need to hear that it's a great product, or they need to hear somebody talking about it or whatnot. And then the last are people who actually physically need to hold it, and they need to look at it, and they need to say, wow, like this is astounding. I got to have this, right? Because if you can put it in their hands and they're like, oh, and that's one of the reasons Shadow Dark has done so well. When you look at it compared to so many other, you know, bare bones projects, it stands out. And I think you guys really nailed that. I really, really did. Oh my God, I put everybody to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just it. And what's also interesting too is, you know, kind of going back, it's, you know, with some of the other questions, you know, when you go into, like, we'll say a different market, a different group, it's like the expectations change. When I've done enough fulfilling for OSE and then even the Cephas engine, I kind of expect a certain number of physical to ratio to PDF only. When we did the DCC adventure, that's the first time I had PDFs exceed the number of physical books.
Wow, interesting.
But then when we did doing the Kickstarter for Dark Visions, the amount at the hardcover level exceeds everything else by far. So it's a different market, a different people. It is interesting, and I think, you know, what you're saying is, you know, especially true for this market, is people are wanting a higher quality, and, you know, those are the types of things you need to do. It seems to come through in the tiers that people are pledging at.
Yes, I took a look through that, and I took a look at your tiers, and I thought that was very interesting as well. You know, when you look at the breakdown of where your backers are moving towards, right? I think that's very eye-opening. And again, right, I apologize, I'm a little more analytical on this stuff, because it's the nuts and bolts under the hood of the car that really tells you where this is going, right? And I think this is absolutely spot on, right? I can't say enough about art direction. Like, really and truly looking at all the samples that you put up and so on and so forth. I frequently am struck by projects on Kickstarter where it looks as if Peter Max got mind-blowingly high and decided to lay out something. And I see these things on tables at conventions, and I see these things on Kickstarter, and I just am like, I look at them and my head just hurts, right? They're just a train wreck. And really and truly, it's clean, it's tidy, it thematically resonates with the rest of the product line you're trying to put it with. And that's a big tip of the hat to you. I think you really nailed that. Well done. Really, really well.
Well, thanks. I mean, each project I try and improve of what's been done before, because I don't have any formal training, but I've hired somebody to give me a little coaching early on. But every project is treated as a professional project.
So there's a question. What about partnering with the indie consortium that Skeeter Green and Levi Combs are a part of?
Okay, so I do have an answer for this.
Okay. Wow! Whoa, that got spicy. That's a spicy meatball.
I'm sorry.
My friend. That's
I
a
jumped
spicy
in there.
meatball.
So generally for those, and that is a good idea. By the way, generally if you're doing if you're, let's say, Gamehole Con or a lot of those other conventions, most of those, well, I should say most, but some of the ones they go to, like Gamehole Con, you have to be. Let me back up. So there's kind of like two tiers at Gamehole. One is the I think where you're just and that's where the term is, but you're a normal seller. Then there's one they give a break for the little guy. If you're the little guy, you have to be the one selling your own product.
So there are the vendors in the vendor hall, and then there are the up and coming publishers that have free space that Alex has been so kind as to let them have. And what you're looking for is something in between. You're looking for somebody who's going to be in the vendor hall, so that you don't have to go to the show and actually rep it, and you don't have to stand at the table.
What about Black?
That was where I was going
Black
next. Is that you really need to talk to John Hirschberger and crew and Greyhawk Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Alan Grohe. And you need to talk to them at Black Blade Publishing, because they go to GaryCon every year. They go to North Texas every year. They are a well-established, strong, solid reputation vendor that could put your products in front of other people in a way that they may not have been repped before. So Black Blade Publish, and if you'd like, after this is over, I'll get you John Hirschberger's phone number, and you can have a chat with him directly. And I think that
your stuff would do real well at North. It would do real well at North Texas.
Yes. And Black Blade is who introduced me to Shadow Dark last year at GaryCon.
Well, I actually am planning on going North Texas this year, and I think I'll be showing a booth with Luau Lu.
Oh, that guy! Yeah.
Oh,
F him too. No, Lou's great. Lou's great. Oh, that's awesome.
You'll get to meet the guys from Black Blade face to face.
Yeah.
I mean, they sell Rob Conley stuff.
I buy a ton of OSR stuff for the Black Blade guys that for people who never come to cons.
Yes.
They never come to cons.
Yeah.
So Black Blade sells their stuff, and I buy a ton of their stuff. I've been introduced to a lot of OSR type people through them. But no, that's great. You guys are coming to North Texas. That is awesome. You will you'll do great there.
Wheels up.
Yeah, so I figured this is a trial, because I would like to retire from my job in a couple of years, and I may start hitting the con circuit, around that time. But I figured Luke called me up, and he messaged me and asked if I was interested in going. So I said, sure.
Heck yes, this is awesome. You want to run some games there too, or are you just gonna hang out, or?
I don't know. Well, I don't know.
Well, let me just. I'll let you know that we hard cap it at 500. Well, we cap it at 500, then we take walk-ups after that. We're at 420 in January.
Nice.
So you are at 420 because
think about going. You guys need to buy your tickets. Whoever's thinking about going needs to buy a ticket.
Yeah. It's probably going to be sold out
pretty quick. We sold out April 1st last year. I believe we'll sell out by March 1st this year. But we still do walk-ups. The only issue being if you don't sign up the first 500, you can't sign up for games or sign up to run games, because we shut the portal down at that point. So,
right. You can still go sign up sheets and stuff.
Oh yeah,
you're still playing games. You
just can't sign up early for games or anything. So yeah, anybody think about going? And the great part about North Texas is if you can't go, you can roll your ticket over for next year. So we're real good about that. But yeah, definitely, Jeff, go ahead and buy your ticket as soon as possible.
It's already purchased.
You're in. You're in, brother.
I'm in like Flynn. Yes.
I would just gotta get you on
There
the
you
whiskey
go.
tasting, and you'll be set for life. To be honest.
Yes, as a man who doesn't drink whiskey, you'll see me
Oh,
slide under the table.
yeah.
You know what? We could
I can
save some
assure you that
German
one year
whiskey
we didn't
from,
even drink whiskey because that's
No,
not
it wasn't
what it was.
whiskey. What was it? I don't know what
It was like, yeah, this is from this
It was
wasn't.
German. It was.
it's an old car. We aren't
was-
sure who made it. It came from the GBR, and we would like you to drink what was in the
Bad.
engine.
So for those who don't know, Germans only started
pretty
making
nasty.
whiskey about 30 years ago. No kidding. They didn't. They made beer. They made great beer. They made beer for centuries. They only started making whiskey 30 years ago. We didn't know this until Chris Stodgel, who does our whiskey tasting, started telling us. Then we started tasting the whiskey, and dear God, we figured out why it was only 30 years ago because they don't know what the hell they're doing.
They make better tanks than they do whiskey.
They
I'll
have
just
no
leave it.
clue what they're doing. It was the worst, some of the worst stuff I've ever put in my mouth,
Right.
and that's saying a lot for me.
I
And,
think a lot of the Leopard. I don't think anything good of German whiskey. I'm just
no, it's terrible. So that,
It's
but
terrible.
he made up for it last year, and this year I believe Chris says he's going to do a Texas whiskey theme. Last year was it Jim Beam last year? He did all the versions.
Yes, there was
Right.
a domestic market after
Domestic-
after 2 years ago when the complaints were bitter and many. He went with a more domestic selection.
Yes, play it safe.
Selection.
Play it safe. There, we're going to play it safe.
But
So
but
this
there
year,
were
I
still
believe
some
he
bunkers.
said this year's going to be Texas whiskeys, which I'm excited about because I'm really into Texas whiskeys. Matter of fact, my latest whiskey here is another Balcones label. This is the Lineage.
Wow, look at
A
you.
nice little $50-$60 bottle there. So yeah, so so if nothing else, you can come watch a bunch of idiots drink whiskey and get loaded, which is always fun, and make comments on the whiskey. So.
All right. We got
By the way, just a real quick. So we had a game day this weekend at the Westin, which is where we had the con, and it was great. Kim George showed up, Ty Beard showed up, and Fugly was there. We got to see our own Fugly, and he brought a couple of things for me. Fugly's just the greatest. But Eric, he bought a big box about so big. It said, "Do not open till midnight auction."
Oh,
So
Jesus.
that went into the store, the warehouse, and so that is going to be quite an interesting little opening because Fugly has made some amazing stuff over the years. So I am, he made the what was it, the Russet Lord, Rob Conley, the Russet Lord bag. He's made some T-shirts.
The receipt for the Russet Lord.
Yes,
Nice.
and so he's
I look
made some
forward to the
amazing stuff.
matching bed sheets.
Oh, so I don't know what he has in store for us at the midnight auction this year, but it'll be very amazing, I'm sure, because Fugly does some great stuff. But no, it's great to see those guys. It's great to see Fugly and Ty and Kim and yeah, and that's what Gary let us know that we're up to about 420 now. So like, oh dear, that people that want to come better get their ass in gear because it's going to sell out very quickly.
But now let me ask Zach, Jeff. Let me ask you guys this. So where did you start? Where did your role playing? What did you cut your teeth on? What was your first set you got as a kid? How did you fall into this? What's your origin story?
Yes, give us your origin story. Any radioactive spiders and all. We want to know.
It for me, it wasn't until it was the 1981 the BX box.
Okay.
The Mulvey was what started it, but once I got into high school, we played everything and anything we could play. So
Sure.
we went to Advanced D&D, but then we played Boot Hill, we played Gamma World, we played Traveler, we played Morrow Project, we played Champions, we played Fantasy Hero.
That's a deep cut when you say Morrow Project. Mike.
Yes, it is.
I approve. Yes. So excellent. Well played.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it seemed like people were either fully D&D all the way through, or they just played everything and anything, and that's kind of the way we did it.
Little Twilight 2000 just to shake it
No,
off.
we missed that. I'm not sure. Well, I guess nobody was really running that. We did play Aftermath.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole swath of the great post-apocalyptic games. Like, do you want your apocalypse light? Do you want your apocalypse to be kind of like really depressing, right? Twilight 2000 is for you, right?
But they all had one thing in common, Jim, is that they were impossible to play without house rules, because they were either Moral Project and Aftermath were all just mind blown, complicated, unless you house ruled the hell out of them. So
what? No cyborg commando amongst us.
All right, Zach, how did you get?
Well, I want to real quick. Can I do a follow-up question to Jeff? Do you have like a module from any of those that really stands out to you as being like the first module or story or campaign that really hooked you?
I would say what sticks in my mind is, and going back and looking at it, it needs some fixing, but the Ruins of Chicago is absolutely fantastic.
Wow. Man, I thought the deep cut. I thought you would hit the end of the deep cuts. That's pretty good. That's pretty spectacular.
I have really considered, because I started to do a Cephas engine conversion for Moral Project, which isn't hard to do. And one of my thoughts was I wanted to do a redo of the Ruins of Chicago.
Wow.
Moral Project would be immensely helped if somebody did an OSR version of it and just eliminated all the weird shit and just got down, because the plot line's cool. It's got a great setting and plot line. It's just the crazy rules that they put in that. It just doesn't, like I said, you had to house rule the hell of it, but the concept is awesome. I love the concept.
Your team has been activated to, you're like, oh my God, we need to come out.
No, it really is a great setting. Great setting. I love it.
Well, the neat thing is that characters, are coming out of a bunker, thinking they're coming out of into open area, and all of a sudden it's like a forest now, and it's like you have problems getting your door open because there's a tree there now.
That's right.
Hundreds of years have gone by, and it's not the same place that you were put into.
I was from Kentucky, and one of the Morrow Project, there was like a series of adventures set in Kentucky where you had this despot that had set up sort of this sort of fiefdom in Kentucky, and you were trying to fight it and so on and so forth. But when you knew the area, you were like, somebody wrote this who really didn't know Kentucky that well, right? You're just like,
the other thing I would say is memorable about it to me, the Moral Project was, and for you, Zach, you've not ever played, I don't think, but they had a list of ICBM targets of Russia to the United States by city and by payload. Then you could roll dice to see how far off those payloads hit, and then you could take a compass and do what do you call those ones? Is it compass? Yeah, you could actually draw where they hit and the devastation created.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's nothing like seeing your hometown on that, or a city nearby you on that. So
and really and truly, right? Like, you just have to think about the folks who wrote the Morrow Project. Like, what kind of silo did they live in where they're just cranking this stuff out and just like, this is. All right, so Zach, how did you start? No question.
Gosh, I think I tried to get in early, but my folks I was raised very, very conservative, and in a very regimented, I think that's a fair word for it, like Baptist home. And I remember
I'm from Kentucky. I can make Southern Baptist jokes all day long.
Yes. And I remember bringing home Dragonlance from the library.
Nice.
And my dad saw it, and he nicely, but took it out of my hands and immediately returned it to the library. So I had many like almost there sort of moments, but it really was college, and I think 3rd edition and Pathfinder, and I ended up with this like little scrawny kid that I was invited to play with all the professors who were playing in their weekly game. So it was me and then about 35 plus years to the next youngest person in the group. And it was it was the classic experience that I wish everybody could have even now, which like pewter minis, Crown Royal dice bags, the actual beer and pretzels games, the smoke breaks outside on the porch with cigars, like that sort of like,
right.
there's a lot of like awesome memories that I have around that and getting a taste of that, even though I think I came in on the very tail end of that being the normal experience for the hobby.
But I think there's a lot to say for that, right? Like I think one of the greatest parts about old school gaming is that we do have that shared commonality, right? That there's a reason the Crown Royal bag became the Ursarat's kind of dice bag. You know, if you were connected, you had a Crown Royal dice bag.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff, like that's just, it lingers through the hobby in a lot of ways that now, I mean, 40 years later, a lot of that has changed, but a lot of it is still imprinted on everybody from those initial, you know, like talking about the BECMI box sets, talking about the Holmes box set, talking about Crown Royal bags. And again, right, like I think Jeff, you had a great point, which is there were people that were just like, I've got my D&D blinders on and this is it, and we're set and we're just going to play D&D, and by the way, D&D. And then there's the entire rest of the ecosphere where exactly, right, like, okay, I want to try other things, right? I've watched enough Thundar the Barbarian. I want an Apocalypse. What do you got? Or Boot Hill or Call of Cthulhu and so on and so forth. So I think.
Well, Jim, remember too that these guys weren't burdened, or at least Zach wasn't burdened by the wargaming stuff, because we came in when wargaming was segueing into role-playing games, and so you had a whole dichotomy going on there, and that's why there's a lot of really odd stuff when you look back on it now in some of the early RPGs, because it was very wargaming. Traveler had some stuff in there. D&D had stuff in there, but now once if you started playing in, say, 2000, you know, era or this century, you didn't have that burden. You didn't have any of that kind of wargaming stuff, and so you're looking at old rules going, what is this weapon type versus armor bullshit? I don't care. I have a sword and I want to hit the guy.
Let me tell you that Gary Gygax had been an actuary without telling you, simply by pointing at all the table, right? Like
there's 18 types of polearms, but no character uses polearms. I don't understand the point.
But I'm giving you a lot on
needs a short sword. I don't need a Beck to Corbin. I don't get it. Why is this even in here? But yeah, so you guys, it's a totally different, it's a mindset change between generations when we look at that stuff and we just like see it like, okay, whatever, we ignore it or whatever.
But like 37-year-old is like, why the hell are there so many pole arms? Right?
Who cares? Yeah, just get a short sword and swing it. But I think new games do that really well too. They just cut out all that crap. So look, we're here for sword and sword, either high fantasy, low fantasy, sword and sorcery, magic, whatever. They just cut out the war game stuff, which probably are fine, but it's probably better for the hobby as a whole that we just move on and let's just do let's just do hardcore RPG fantasy. Yeah. And not have to worry about wargaming bullshit in there too. So
yes, all the yes. So
we had to suffer. I don't know how I can't remember. I don't know. Jim had to suffer this. I had to suffer through people who played war games that thought D&D was cool. So I'm going to run a D&D game now. This is like the late 70s, mid to late 70s, and that was horrific experiences because.
I can't remember if I've ever told this story on here before, but my first wargaming experience, I showed up. It was a sand table, and I was put in charge of 2 Jeeps that could move 4 inches a turn. And that was all I got to do.
That was your responsibility. You get the Jeep.
And I never got to, they had guns on the back, but I never got to shoot at anybody. And all I got to do is just move my Jeeps around, right? Because I could not be trusted to do anything else, which is fine. I was a kid. I understand that. But my God, right at that point, I was like, you're all dead to me, especially in 15 millimeter. You can get my ass. I'm done. I'm just done. So.
Yeah. I think one of the strange things from the past going to the wargaming is the time segmentation. So I never noticed until I started working with Zach with OSC is the word turn. When I hear turn, it's 10 minutes.
Right.
But to anybody else, that makes no sense. A turn would be a character's action.
Right.
And everybody's actions combined to make a round. But here it's like a turn equals 10 minutes. Like what is
What's
with
why when you
this?
play now, like when I played the game, when I ran the game that I ran this weekend, I used BX, but I kind of used a little bit of Greg's Dragon Slayer in there also. And everybody asked, "What's a turn in your game?" I'm like, "What do you mean? What's a turn? A turn's what an old turn always is." And then it clicked, like you said, like, "Oh wait, I have a lot of generations here. I have."
That's right. There's a lot of scars. They're deep.
They don't know what a turn is. A turn could be lots of things. And so
Yes.
I had to explain. No, a turns 10 minutes. Well, each turn is broken up into 10, segments, and we're gonna roll initiative each. So I did have to explain that because normally I just like, well, it's obvious what this is. Of course, you played first edition D&D with me. Oh, you didn't? Okay, you're only 35 years old. You're not, 62. So.
But then looking back, each edition would have even a round. How long a round was could vary from 6 seconds to I think a minute.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's and now with all the OSR clones out there, retro clones, and of course the new games, and I've just been looking at this 100 Dungeons, which is really cool. But it does a lot of 5e stuff in there too. So yeah, there's so many different ways that that can go. Not to mention how combat goes, how initiative goes, how all these different ways of doing it. You really have to be more specific than we. The one thing that I talk about a lot that this generation will never understand, or people born this century, or people that game this century never understand, is the whole shared experience thing. And by that I mean, and we've talked about this before, Jim and Eric and I, about when you were a kid. Everybody you knew went through Tomb of Horrors. They just did because there was only like 10 modules for sale out in the market. Everybody did the Giant series. Everybody did, this. And so you go to a convention and you're like, so what did your group do in Tomb of Horrors? Oh, we did, and everybody had the same story, the commonality of experience. You don't have that commonality of experience anymore because there's so many games out there and there's, 50 years of material now and there's all this new stuff. And so it's really interesting. You get people, they don't have that commonality. They can't just get there and go, what have you been through? There's very few adventures or even systems now that everybody's done and can say, oh yeah, we did this, or here's what we did. We went to the Giants, and like Jim was saying, we cast the rock to mud and all the Giants, whatever. And then somebody else have another story. Somebody else have another story. Now it's like, what do you mean? No, Giant series. No, I was born in 2000. We didn't do the Giant series. What are you talking about? Oh, you mean the 5e version? Oh yeah, we did the 5e version. Yeah, so
you could find a little bit of that, I think. Like sometimes, like I'm a big Alien RPG fan. That's a huge system for me, and I like finding like the Facebook group for that specific thing. And often in those groups, you can find a little bit of that commonality of shared experience. And that's where a lot of those conversations, I think, are still happening. Like that's the remnant of that is in that group when we're all saying we're here for this one thing. And then one guy will post and say, I'm getting ready to run the starter set. What notes do you have for me or whatever? And I think that, but yeah, you're right. Like at a convention or whatever, like, or, just, you can't assume that that's the norm just because somebody likes RPGs or just because they like D&D that they're going to have that shared. Yeah.
Well, I think we're also going to see, each game system has its ecosphere. And so like all the people with Dungeon Crawl Classics, all the people for the first 10 years of Dungeon Crawl Classics are used to that ecosphere was pretty thin and pretty shallow. And everybody who played DCC played Sea God, all of it. And that resonates with people, like the Chained Coffin, the Purple Planet, and so on and so forth. And so that lets people who were big DCC people over the last decade, there's a shared commonality in that. And do you remember when? Yes, I do. And so on and so forth. So each system develops that ecosphere. It's just how strong is it? And that's one of the things I always point to is that I say that I'm a big believer that Shadow Dark, DCC's biggest strength came from the fact that the community very quickly gelled and came together around the game system, and that helped it grow. And Shadow Dark has that same thing going for it, right? Shadow Dark very quickly, this is the community, and this is how it embraces, and this is what it loves, and this is what it wants. And as long as you feed that community, that's where it's going to go.
And it has some benefit too of, I think Shadow Dark benefits from the last several years we've had, I think a great craze, but a craze of third-party creator communities swelling up, like Mothership or like Morkborg or even OSE to some extent, or like there's these great systems that have really caught fire in the third party scene in the last 5 years. And in that catching fire, we can remember 2 years ago when there was, I think, literally like 200 Morkborg products that came out in 1 year, and a quarter of them were good, right? Like
Yep.
but we had to go through that, and we had to see as fan bases, but also as creator communities, we had to get through a phase of, we're going to buy everything and we're going to make everything and we're just going to throw a lot of stuff at walls. And Shadow Dark benefits from having come out of that. The community's already like, we've been through this with Morkborg, or we've been through this with this other one. We'd like it to be of at least this quality, please.
Right.
And I think that's
minimum
healthy.
entry point, and we're not going below this, right?
Right.
Don't try to go below that.
Right. It's healthy. It's really healthy for a system, because there's nothing more disappointing as a backer than getting something in that isn't at the quality that you thought it might be or whatever. And then that makes you scared of backing the next project.
It just lands and it's tepid, and you have this regret. You have this terrible regret of, why on God's green earth did I back this? And you phoned it in, and interestingly, I think you're absolutely spot on, because the next dot I would connect in the line of dots you just said is that the reason we've seen such a healthy third-party ecosphere of things like Morkborg and Shadow Dark and so on is because, just as with the BECMI folks, when they moved into other game systems and they moved into things like Call of Cthulhu in a big way and so on and so forth, after the big swell of 5th edition, you have people that are now hungry for other things that are not 5th edition, right? There are the people who are just going to be playing the next version of Dungeons and Dragons, but you have a lot of other people who realize, Shadow Dark, Dark Visions, none of this looks like anything that's coming out of Wizards of the Coast.
Right.
And that's appealing. It's
Right.
appealing because it addresses,
Good. Yeah.
I wanted something more gothic. I wanted something darker. I wanted something just, I wanted to be able to read the page and feel the moisture dripping off the walls and the hot breath of the monster on my neck. Oh, shit. And that doesn't come out of D&D, but it certainly comes out of Shadow Dark. It certainly looks like it's coming out of Dark Visions.
Awesome.
Well, I don't want to call them necessarily art books, but they appeal on a visual level. It's like the Shadow Dark stuff, James Raggy stuff, Jason Schultz's stuff. You look at it and it's like, this is more than just a generic D&D book that watch he's going to sneak a little AI art into and then claim they didn't. But it's quality stuff that works on multiple levels. You take a Raggy book, maybe you don't like the adventure, but you're going to be very happy to put on a shelf and show off the art, some of the art, maybe not all the art.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it depends on your lifestyle.
Right.
No judgment.
But and the layout.
No shaming at all. No.
But this is stuff that appeals. Kelsey's stuff. Hey, I'm 57. I don't need to break out my readers or a magnifier to read the words on the page. I can comfortably run.
Are you waiting for?
Dude, that's huge.
Like large print versions of Shadow Dark? Because that's
huge.
It's
really
good.
is.
It's great.
That's huge for me.
I'm saying it's a huge selling point. One of the things I hated about the last Frog God edition of Swords and Wizardry Complete was that I opened it up and went, "Oh fuck, I need my readers."
You can't use it at the table. You can't use it at the table. It's the type was too small, but that's not a problem with. Well, I mean, I'm just looking at the appendix, Gary's appendix too. I mean, that's also I can read these too. When you get to the RH, it's something you consider. It really is.
So I think a big compliment to the two of you, Zach and Jeff. The biggest compliment I can give you, somebody very, very smarter than me has always pointed out that the way you sell these things is the cover sells the book, but it's the contents that sell the next book. And what you've really done is you've nailed this, right? You've got this long track record. You've got this cross-pollination across lots of different systems. But everybody who's buying into Dark Visions now, when you stick the landing and they get the book, they're going to be hungry for the next project because of what's in the book, right? I mean, I look at the cover and just there's parts of 80s hair metal Jim that is just electrified by what I see, and I'm all in. But you know, it's what's inside that's going to sell the next thing, and that's what lets you build onto the next Kickstarter for if you want to go in that direction of Shadow Dark again. And I think that's fabulous. I do. I think that's really fabulous.
I think for sure. I don't want to speak for Jeff, but I know we've been talking about it. I'm sure there will be a follow-up Shadow Dark thing at some point. I'm still neck deep in loving the system and having an itch to write it. And I think Jeff's happy with how this one went, so he'll probably let me toss another dart at the wall and see. But yeah, it's also just fun to be like. I think Jeff and I will talk about, like, when we develop for OSE or Traveler or something else, like it's not, you don't always design for a system because it's going to make the most money. Sometimes you do it because you love that system and you want to contribute. And I think that's the best reason to do it. But when we have something like this that we're enjoying doing, and also it's working at a different level, then it's like, okay, well, yeah, let's find some space. Let's clear some space and figure out how we're going to do this again, because we're having fun and it's working, and more people are going to enjoy it, hopefully. So
yeah, and we want to make sure whatever we do is going to be of value, and it's going to be something. I don't want to say just different to be different, but we want to make sure that it's something worthy of actually putting out again. That it's going to be refreshing and provide good tools and something different. Yeah,
you don't want to just do a greedy cash grab. I'm stunned, Jeff and Zach, stunned. I'm hurt.
It would be very easy to say, okay, Zach, you got 4 weeks to give me another manuscript and put the next thing out. Which...
I just want you to make up some crap and put dark on the end of it, and we're skipping it. We're just going to skip it.
Just roll forward again. No, I want to say on real quick, like, one of the things that I loved about this project was Jeff is the master at this. I've talked about it with other people that wrote for Gary's Appendix, Mike, but like, Jeff's great at like saying, what do you want to do? And letting me or whoever it is pitch, like, this is my vision, but then coming back in with like really insightful ideas, criticism, notes for honing it further and building on that. And I think that like none of these projects would be at the level that they are without Jeff, like, giving that runway at the beginning for the creator to get excited, but then helping like put the guardrails on the sides to making their excitement end up in a quality product. So,
well, that's what a good editor does. I mean, right? That's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
The problem is there's so many editors out there that have a huge ego. I like what you wrote, but it would be better if we did this, and then 90% of it's the editor, and it's suddenly the writer's gone. So that's just the mark of a good editor.
The way this started was something a little bit different, and then it was getting kind of close to writing time, and Zach says, well, what about doing it this way instead and doing it for Shadow Dark? And I thought, well, if somebody feels that passionate about it, it's like, why wouldn't I? It's like, and I'm also open for trying different systems. So I think that's the main thing. I think there's obviously people out there who put out books that have very definite ideas, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in my mind, it's like, having other people do writing. There's a reason why I want other people to write, because they're not me, and they can do things I can't do much better than I can do. But I can sometimes look at it and say, I like this, but I'll almost never shut anybody down. But I may just say, well, what about this direction, or change a little bit here? Because they've got momentum. You get good people, good writers, that they have an excellent momentum. It's just a matter of just a slight diversion sometimes.
You're so polite in this. This is what I just love, right? That's just, you're so genteel.
Yeah.
Genteel Jeff. That's what I call it.
Yeah.
I'm putting the hateful red pen away.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And I actually love, I mean, that's the fun thing. I mean, work with so many different people that write, and it's just, and some come at different levels, but they all come with a lot of excitement. love and passion. So it's just it's exciting to be able to see, you know, these things come to life. You know, it's like with Gary. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, Doug. I was just saying. So when you do a Gary's Appendix, like for instance, you have sometimes you have themed issues like monsters or dragons. Do you come at it like that? Do you say, okay, everybody pitch me a dragon idea, or everybody pitch me a monster idea, or pitch me a trap idea, whatever? Or you just say, look, whatever comes in, go, oh, you know, oh, a bunch of this came in. I'm going to save this for my dragon issue, or I'm going to save this for my monster issue. How does that work?
Well, generally, I don't work too far ahead. I normally don't do themes, but I think that's probably been more of a hindrance than a positive. So when I do themes, I think it helps people who write narrow things down. So people may not have, you know, if you say write me an article about anything, it becomes very difficult for a lot of people, myself included. But if you say, you know what, we're going to do one that's going to be underground themed, then all of a sudden it helps people focus. So I probably should do more, even if they're not specified as far as a.
Oh my God. He failed a roll. Oh, he's back. Okay. I was worried.
Yes. So I was saying I probably need to do better about actually giving more general themes for people. And I think I tend to, but the themes seem to work better. It's hard to know whether, I think as far as this is all an experiment, right? Every issue I do, I'm experimenting or attempting to understand the world a little bit better. Now, the question is, if I do a themed issue, does that help sell an issue or does that hinder an issue? If somebody says, you know what, I really don't like werewolves, but this is a werewolf issue.
But the completists will buy them all, right?
That's true.
The best part. The completists will be like, I need the one in the most perfect condition possible for my hermetic shelf. Yeah.
I like your themed issues the most, Jeff. I know I've told you this maybe before, hinted at least, but like, I think that you're exactly right. As your creators get excited about that, or it helps narrow in the focus. But I think also just like as a GM, when I'm sitting there like thinking about, I'm going to run my Mirkwood campaign next. What could I read to like get really jacked up about forest encounters or yada yada yada, dark woods. Being able to say, Gary's Appendix has a dark woods themed issue. I could go back and read that. I think that's like a valuable time, and I think that's the time for the most part that I go back to books after I've read them once and put them on the shelf, is when I'm like, I'm doing this thing and I need inspiration. There's a book that is full of inspiration for this.
Yeah, and especially I think when the cover also iterates it. So if it's a spooky cover and it's about spooky themes, it visually cues you to go back to your library. It's like, this is going to probably be in this kind of theme rather than it could just be anything and anything in that issue. Yeah, somebody asked if there's interested in creating a Dolmenwood specific content. I don't have any plans for that. And I don't know how open it is. I do in sticking with OSE. I'm not necessarily sticking with OSE. So the next project is going to be a science fantasy bestiary. So it's a Sword and Planet kind of weird sci-fi 50s craziness bestiary.
It's awesome. It's fun.
This island Earth awaits you. I have an appalling amount of 50s serials and science fiction movies, and this couldn't speak to me more. So yes, I'm all in. Right.
So what I did is I went through Pinterest and various places and picked up a bunch of creatures and peoples and different things and gave them screenshots, put them in a document, and I gave them to Zach. So Zach, write these up.
Nice.
He said it was so easy. It was so easy. It was
so easy. He's like, here's all this weird stuff. I don't know what any of it is. Tell me what it is. Yes, sir. That sounds awesome. Yeah, that was a really weird project. Like weird science fantasy for OSE on a different planet. Like I just like, yeah, this is not your average fare. And just I hadn't ever done like a full on bestiary only project before, so that was really fun to like noodle on and go as Jeff's feedback like every week was like, push it weirder, go weirder. Can you write up a weirder table? Can you find a weirder way to say this? And I'm like, great, all right, awesome, that's what I want to hear. So it was really fun.
Yeah, so then I'm also planning on putting out a setting book for it, and then maybe in a couple years have a RPG using the DCC rules for that. But right now it'll be for Old School Essentials.
Nice. Just kidding.
So what's your favorite thing in the book? Like, what's the thing that you're the most proud of in Dark Visions? What's the thing that you're like, this is it, we stuck the landing, it's perfect, I will brook no complaints. If they don't get it, that's their own fault, not mine, because it's just perfect.
So there's 3 adventures. There's 2 adventures in Dark Visions, and then Tower of Six is kind of like the support zine that is also the 3rd adventure. And I really am proud of the adventure 1.
Okay.
For the reason of I wanted something that was 100% playable in a regular session. Like I love a lot of one-shot things, but so many one-shot things that get released are definitely not playable in a single session, right? They've got way too much stuff. So I was really happy that it came together in like a really tight way. But then I had the idea of every adventure features cultists, of course, but I wanted this one because you're level 1, or that's the idea, level 0 or level 1. I wanted it to be like not a dungeon full of cultists, and I wanted it to feel like you're coming in on the tail end of the cultists clearing the dungeon, and you're kind of picking up the threads, picking up the pieces, picking up the scraps from them. And can that be entertaining? Can that be like an interesting dungeon crawl to be the people behind the crawlers? And I really think it works. For the feedback that we've got has been like, this is really fun. It's very different. It still has that traditional like level 1 dungeon crawl vibe,
right?
But the fact that you're coming in on the tail end of the actual dungeon crawl, I think hopefully makes it feel very unique and stand out even still.
Well, that's awesome, right? And I like the idea that it's a level 1 adventure, right? So it's not, we had to put together a high level party to come clear out. Yes,
Yeah.
So for me, what it was is we had a blank spot with each of the cults, and I said, Zach, what we need is a plot generator for each one. So Zach generated a very tight plot generator for each cult with a motive, a method, a goal, and a complication. So
It's really fun.
This could get dark quick.
So really what this does at this moment, you can easily take one of these and make these a major plot of your campaign. Very easy. Make a few rolls. Or if you just want to, if you got a normal adventure, this is the way I kind of view it. Let's say you just got a normal adventure, like Keep on the Borderlands.
Yep.
Add a cult. Roll a few things there. Add it to it. It's going along on the side.
Is there anything a cult doesn't make better?
I know.
Really,
Exactly. Yeah.
No,
that's exactly right. Jeff, that should have been our tagline, because I fully agree with this. Like,
right? Like really and truly, don't you think it would just be a little better with some cult?
Yeah.
If you put cults in it, or sharks, or better, a shark cult, then you've hit the jackpot. Then that's
and flying
there's nowhere
sharks
else
for the
to go.
post-apocalypse,
Except,
right?
Yeah.
But that's the T-shirt.
Yeah,
Or the T-shirt on the front is just very small white type, black T-shirts. You can just say, "Don't you think it would be a better adventure if there was a cult?" And then on the back, Dark Vision. This is easy.
Perfect.
You'll sell hundreds.
That we should have done that. There's still time, Jeff. We got 11 days. Let's make a new graphic up.
And so for me, the way the cults are written, they make them useful for really any game system. It's something you could easily port to any other D&D style game or non D&D, and you can easily make use of it.
Yeah.
I'm a fan, right? You can't be a Call of Cthulhu guy without loving cults.
Yes, exactly.
It's just how bad do the cults get? That's the
Well, I think that was the other fun thing. You brought that up. Like one thing that I talked about with Jeff early on was like, all right, so the deities in Shadowdark are like lawful, neutral, and chaotic. And I told him, I said, I want there to be cults for all of them. So we need to figure out a way to do like cults for a lawful good deity. And I mean that it ends up that there's obviously plenty of ways that a cult can still try to worship a lawful good deity. But that was really a fun design. Like that was one of the like, you got like a red pin on the board of like, this has to happen. Like I have to be able to figure out this part of it and include it all. So that it's not just like all these cults are chaotic evil nonsense and they worship the worst of the worst gods, but you know, you got your goody two shoes cults as well.
I like that goody two. Are those the Seventh Adventists or is that?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I wasn't going to name names, but yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Sorry,
We have
that
plenty of real world examples for any type of cult you can imagine. So you just have to think about it for a minute.
That's right. I'm reminded there's the line. There's an old episode of WKRP in Cincinnati where an older guy that Jennifer had been spending time with, the unbelievably attractive Lonnie Anderson, played the secretary, and he dies and he has a video will, and you know, for all of his family he leaves them nothing, absolutely nothing. And then he says, and I want the bulk of my estate to go to the Hare Krishnas if they'll just leave people alone at the airport. And then he's like, "Oh, I'm just joking." And you're like, "Oh my god." That's right. So 11 days to go. You've hit this high point. It's the biggest Kickstarter you've had. You know, so what is your next project after this one, right? So when the dust settles from this, what are you rolling up your sleeves and sort of thinking the direction that you're going to go next?
Oh, it's going to be Denizens of the Bloodsands. So it's a science fantasy zine.
But that's next on the docket.
Yes, and then after that is going to be I'm doing a omnibus of Gary's Appendix. So it's going to be all color, new art, completely laid out. So it's going to be 6 issues, all combined to a hardcover.
Oh.
So lessons learned from this will go into that.
Very nice, very nice. And so does this make you then think for doing that omnibus, do you now think about raising the bar as far as presentation and hardcover? And so, I mean, does that start your gears turning, or do you think that audience would prefer something that's more paperback and not so durable? That's the word I'll use.
Well, I think there's definitely demand for hardcover, but also for so if you go through all the issues of Gary's Appendix, you'll notice that it keeps changing every issue.
Right.
Every issue I try to make better and layout, whatever. I switch to all color. So no, I think having a full color book, I think will help the appeal of this and maybe reach out to other audiences. And I don't know whether I may even just take off the Old School Essentials sticker off the front. We'll see.
Interesting.
I think it's tricky. I think that, you know, I don't know, like it's a debate I think Jeff and I have had for a long time, and it's hard because I don't know that as much as we all love system neutral stuff, I don't know that system neutral stuff ever can quite find an audience, right? As a project. It can have fans, but it doesn't have a community around it so much.
Right.
And I think that what OSE has done, that OSE sticker on Gary's Appendix has done, is it allowed us to, hitch our wagon or at least have a starting point with a community. And I think when you start doing something that's like, hey, we're ripping off all the badges, as much as that may make sense for what's actually in the book, I think that it's hard then for somebody to be like, yeah, but I feel like I'm a Shadow Dark guy or I'm an OSE guy and it doesn't have those things on there. So maybe this isn't for me. So it's tricky. It's a tricky puzzle.
It's tricky, but I think that a lot of gamers are going to look at it like I look at OSC as, oh, OSC is generic OSR. I know it's its own, but at the same time, it is a label that people look at, and there's a community, like you said, built around it. There's a community built around Shadow Dark. There's a reason why even Greg Gillespie has his own RPG system now, because Labyrinth Lord was kind of what he was building on, and that kind of flatlined, and he needed something that would be recognizable to build that community around. So I think that systems are where those communities often get built, and is an identifier. Everybody knows you can use your swords and wizardry with your Labyrinth Lord, with your Dragon Slayer, with your OSE, but still it's an identifier that people latch onto. And when you say system neutral, people are going to go, oh, so it's got no system.
So
Well-
I think the problem is that people then they think, oh shit, I have to do some work. And really and truly, that's the thing that holds them back.
Well,
Because they don't, I mean, they want to be able to just pick it up and open it and run versus I might have to tinker with it.
They get worried that it's going to be like the Eldritch Entertainment decimal system to
Stop.
that it's
Stop.
not.
well, the thing with the Gary's Appendix is all the articles. There's nothing that's really any mechanics that tie to any system,
Right.
and they're mainly just some tables. So even the bestiary that focuses on the narrative that goes with the creatures, even though I do put the creatures themselves in there. So, what I would really like is for somebody who is interested in 5th edition D&D to look at it, flip through it, and say, oh, wow, this is useful. But, that always comes down to, but if you put OSE, you're already signaling to a lot of people to buy it. So it's a tricky thing, but there's one thing on Kickstarter. There's another thing maybe on a bookshelf at a game store.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and it's hard to, you have to make a product that sells itself with no help on the shelf competing against everything else.
Yep.
And the worst thing, and I'll grab a book here real quick. The worst thing is 9 times out of 10, it's spined. So how are you going to get their attention, right? And I can think of things that you can do. If you've got a spine, you can put interesting, like you could put something colorful or a skull or something that's going to make them go, oh, what the hell is that? And then they're going to reach over and they're going to pick it up, and then boom, you've got a chance at getting them. Because very rarely do you actually have product that's actually displayed face out in the majority of bookstores. It might be in the new products area briefly for some period of time, but then it gets put on a shelf, and that's tough. It's very tough.
Yeah, and that's just it. A lot of the stuff, it's just, there's no clear. I mean, I wish there was alternate dimensions of, Jeff doing the same thing, where Jeff does one thing, we could do all this A/B testing. But unfortunately, we only have one life, and I can't go backwards. So it's like whatever choices I make, I have to stick with or live with, I should say.
No, but that's yes. But the thing is that you've obviously chosen well based on how things are going. Right?
Well, I think definitely I can't argue that I could have done much better with the Shadow Dark Visions. No argument about that. But I maybe could have made better decisions. Like for instance, this is what's hard is, you just don't know. I mean, how you do things, would it made a difference or not?
Jeff, we can bring the discussion that you and I have every month, which is, should Scoundrels continue to be a traveler game additive, or should it shift over to Mothership?
Wait. Let's just reflect on Jeff's despondent sigh.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that particularly.
Yeah.
So that's,
Yeah.
So please tell us of this quandary. Look, Jeff,
Yeah, I want to know. Now I'm interested.
Like getting ready to bring the gun show. I love it.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm interested.
So I mean, it gets Scoundrels is written for Cephas Engine. Cephas Engine is kind of a version that is people are able to use. We'll call it like an SRD for Traveler, because apparently Mongoose got a little. They were pretty open through the open gaming license, and I guess they rescinded and created a lot of problems. So anyway, now I've got so now I put the Cephas Engine compatible on the book. Now, does that signal to Traveler, people who play Traveler, that this is a Traveler compatible product? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But then Zach started putting, so one of the things you can do in Backer Kit is you can ask questions and people will answer. And so then Zach asked, I think it was what system are you using this for? And not everybody's using it for Traveler.
A very small percentage of the people that are buying this Traveler book are using it for Traveler, which was like
interesting.
Once you set it out in the wild, you have no control over where it will land, right?
No, but you're making assumptions. So I'm assuming some things, but the assumption is that if I move this away from Traveler, will I lose everybody? But then when you look at the data, probably not.
Yeah.
I think what you've discovered is you've created a product that resonates with people, and the game system is again secondary.
Yes.
Right. And
yes.
That's what really should drive your creative vision, is not you are not bound by the artifices of just Traveler. You are bound instead by where your heart wants you to go with the adventure, and people will follow. And that's, we see that time and time again, right? Nobody was like, hey, Kelsey, you ought to do this, right? Kelsey was like, nope, going my own way, doing this thing, and sticks the landing, and that's perfect, right? I think a lot of times what we see is we see a slavish amount of attention focused to trying to hold on to some sort of framework, or if I use this framework, I can stick the pieces onto it or whatever. And time again, what we see is great art gains the followers and gains the passion and moves in that direction. And I think you're right there. I think you're spot on.
Yeah. And I think the issue is, and I hate to say it, I mean, I'm going to just use a more extreme example. I love the hero system. But
okay. It's brave strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it plays out.
But nobody plays it. It's nobody plays it. Even if they come up with a new edition, nobody.
You're literally the first person in 5 years I've heard say this. Yeah. So I'm like all excited for you, right?
Yeah, I'll play. But so, and I think there's a lot of Traveler fans out there, but I don't think the younger people are attracted to it. It's not gaining audience. It's just selling to the same old.
The median average age of a Traveler player is the same median average age of a ham radio operator in the United States.
Yeah, I like that. You're right. You are right.
I'm just telling you. Right? Like, don't kid yourself.
And I think you see with different communities, because I've published for Cephas Engine, I published for Dungeon Crawl Classics, and I've also done for Old School Essentials, and they all, it's like I have strong people, or people who feel very strongly in support of Scoundrels of Brixton, but I don't feel that the community support is really there. I don't know that community-wise it's really wanted. But when you go to DCC, that is the opposite. Third-party creators are welcomed and are encouraged, and I think same thing with and that's been my disappointment. Probably with the Scoundrels, I figured there'd be more hungry people. It would catch on more. It really hasn't. So that's where I think, and I don't know that because it's more of a setting with adventure hooks and characters. It's not an adventure, so it really could, as you mentioned, Jim, it could really go to any system.
Yes, right. I think you're again, right. You guys are dialed in. You don't need our validation. What you have is the validation of success. And what's interesting, what I really have appreciated about this entire conversation with both of you tonight is that both of you both of you are passionate, but you are also dispassionate enough to actually look at the data, and you're looking and listening to the customer. And there are so often times where I see game companies where the customer is always wrong, like we know what we're doing and we know we're the best. And then there's other times where they are slavishly devoted to listening to what the customers say, and it leads them into the weeds and they never get back out. And I laughed, Hero System, you're right. There's not a lot of people knocking the door down to play Hero System.
No.
Right? I was at a convention one time
I
where
think the door is open, like wide open, and it's been open for years. But there's still not anybody.
there's
Yeah,
nothing.
like
There's I mean, it's those folks, it's the Torg players. And what I was gonna say is I was at a convention one time where two Bunnies and Burrows fanatics happened to bump into each other, and they
Wow.
were the two happiest people I've ever seen that had not gotten married. They literally were just at a table, like, mainlining Bunnies and Burrows in the discussion, and you were just like, I'm so happy for you, and I want to put you in a bubble, and the two of you should get married and have lots of just whatever. Just go be happy, right? Because you found each other,
Yes.
and against all odds, you found each other. You should buy lottery tickets.
Yeah.
But exactly that, right? And I can hear the gears turning in your head when you say, right? Well, I wrote it as a traveler adventure, but yeah. And who cares, right? Because again, I'm intrigued. I am Morkborg curious. I am Morkborg curious. I own no Morkborg, but
Gotta fix that.
It's a
there's
great con game, Jim.
piratical part
It's
of
a
me
great
that
con.
is-
People
that is
play it a con.
interested, intrigued, right? It's like standing in the bar and you've spotted somebody at the bar and you are intrigued, right? You want to go over and you want to sort of talk about this and so on and so on. But at this point, like when you say there was 200 products in a year, I just cringe and run away because I have not room for 200 Morkborg products, right? It's just too slippery a slope. I can't do it. I just can't. That's okay, right? That's okay.
Yeah,
But still,
absolutely.
I love tonight's conversation simply because one of the things that has been so clear that's just weaved through everything that you've done is this inherent business sense of making sure the next this project leads to the next one and so on and so forth. And you're smart enough to say, well, and other times you're like, ooh,
Yeah.
and that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. So this is delightful.
Well, it's because good writing triumphs all. I mean, I look through it, every time I get a Gary's Appendix, I flip through there and, maybe I might not use everything there, but I always find something I'm going to use. And the system's not important. What's important is the hooks. If I see something really interesting, I was reading something of Levi Combs the other day, and he had I won't get into the details, but he had an article in one of his fanzines about something, and I thought that's a great idea. So I actually contacted Levi. I said, I was thinking about doing this with your idea. He's like, sounds great. Go with it. And it was basically about a group of adventurers. Something terrible happened to them, and yet they still lived. But then years later, things are going to happen. So I decided I was going to move that into my campaign, so to speak. And but it's just an idea. I don't even remember what the system was. It might have been a DCC venture, might have been something. The system was unimportant. What was important was the idea and the writing, and that's what I look at when I get Gary's Appendix. Usually, I just say, "Is there anything in this issue I can pull out?" Okay, here's the issue. A lot of it's about dragons. I don't have a lot of dragons. Is there anything I can pull out here? Yes, there's things I can pull out. Here's a monster issue. You think, oh yes, I can pull this monster out. I like this. So that is more important. So writing is the most important part of it. Just the writing itself. The system to me matters.
The best example I always give on this subject, right? That the system is an afterthought. Is the original John Tynes and Pagan Publishing's Delta Green. Because when you pick up the very first Delta Green volume and you start to thumb through it and you look at it, Jesus, there is no great abundance of mechanics or anything like that. Instead, every page is a horrific fire hose of dark post-World War II secrets that you are not prepared for. And every page just simply sprays you into a corner and you're gasping for breath, trying to come up for air, and system has nothing to do with it, right? And it went on to sweep the Ennies. It went on to sell tons and tons and tons, and it had nothing to do with the system, and it had everything to do with the absolute page-turning horror they created on every single page.
Well,
And sorry, go ahead.
I will also add that I think they have the best version of basic role playing. They out Call of Cthulhu as far
Well,
as
and that's exactly it, right? That forced Chaosium to have an oh shit moment, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people forget 5th edition had landed, 5th edition was and suddenly this upstart band of almost like hippies that originally began in Missouri, ported over to Seattle and then began producing things. And it also showed that they played a lot at cons. They played all this stuff at cons, and they knew how to twist all those knobs to get the creepy meter up to an 11 and grace under pressure and so on and so forth. And Zach, what you said earlier is so true, right? You go to a convention and you play a game and you're like, holy shit, this is amazing. I want to do more of this, right? And that's how you get into Shadow Dark. That's how you get into DCC. That's how you get into all of this stuff, is you dip your toe in that water and you don't go for a swim. It literally drags you under and immerses you, and you come out and you've been baptized and you're like, okay, I'm in, I want this, right? And that's the wonderful part about con gaming. It's the wonderful part about the role-playing experience.
Yeah.
Not that I have an opinion. Apologies.
No, that's great. That's amazing. I couldn't agree more about that.
Well, I've never played DCC except for cons, and I remember when they were debuting the whole funnel system, and I just thought that was such a fun idea. I just wanted to play funnel systems all day. I didn't care about what went after the funnel system. Getting my 3 hit point characters to live through an adventure with a pitchfork. Was the best.
The greatest
thing ever.
The greatest thing Goodman ever published were scratch off character sheets for the funnel. Right? Like it just okay, and I'm a cobbler and I've got a skillet. Let's go. Right? He's dead. Okay, I got another one.
What can I do with this skillet?
So I want to do a speed dating singles meetup with DCC character sheets. And I think it would be the greatest thing that ever happened in the universe, right? I think it would be hysterically fun.
I'll double down on what Mike said. Like, I think a lot. I do somewhere around 15 conventions a year, and I think every time I go, it's stupid. I'm stupid. But yeah, it's nuts. But I think about it every time I go. Like, if the publishers would realize, like Goodman Games does, and that's part of why they're great. But if more of the publishers would realize how important crafting the experience of the introduction to your system is, what is that? What is the adventure that we really want presented at the show? Like, can we craft an experience with giving GMs resources online, or however we want to do it, or if it's with the starter set, or if it's with the adventure that's in the back of our core book? Like, what is the thing that we can empower them to present and bring to the table easily and readily that is going to like showcase why you're going to fall in love with this in the first 15 minutes? I think Goodman does it perfectly with those funnels, with the scratch off things. Like, it's everything that you're like, oh yes, this is what I want. And I wish that like that was more of a, I see different GMs sometimes come to the table with their own creations. Like, you've thought this through, and this is an amazing presentation. And I wish that the higher level, because I mean, there's certain systems. Well, I love this system, so this isn't disparaging it, just the methodology. But like the new Marvel Multiverse system is super fun, but they did put out adventures for it. They don't put out adventures for it hardly at all. They don't put out anything that's small and bite-sized.
That's right.
And that really suffers, because I think that is a game that should be, like Mike said, with Morkborg or something like that. It's a great con game because everybody can just pick up a sheet that says you're Spider-Man and dive in.
Right.
But there's no adventure that makes it easy and shows how much of a blast that system is to run with and what the highlights of it are.
Forbeck gave them.
The TSR used to do that. I mean, the most memorable adventures, obviously, in old school D&D old days, were the low level ones. That everybody remembers keeping the Borderlands for a reason. They remember Village of Hama for a reason. Those used to be the best parts, and like I said, commonality of experience. Everybody ran through those, and everybody used those. Everybody set up that. And then when you went and wrote your own module, for some reason, it looked a lot like Village of Hama, or it looked a lot like Keeping the Borderlands. I don't know that WotC even does that at all anymore. Do they put any brain power into creating a low level game experience that everybody can?
I want to rewind just a second. Number one, let me hit on. I think Matt Forbeck absolutely delivered what they wanted, but they were too short sighted to understand exactly what else needed to come with it. Like, they got the big honking rule book and it landed with a big splash, but the reason that it's just sitting is because that there's no ecosystem after that.
Yeah,
well,
they don't follow through.
Yeah, that's right. And I want to go back a little further, right? Which is what's so striking to me, and which this should be the grand lesson for an RPG company, right? Is that Goodman play tested the hell out of DCC, and play tested it over and over, and tweaked it, which is why there's one big honking rule book. And there are no other big honking additional rule books. It's just the one. And it has thrived. Yes, multiple printings, slight corrections, but it has thrived in that space. One rule book, and then the tail is as long as you can comprehend, maybe even more than you can comprehend. But it and Shadow Dark and all these other things that have succeeded over the last decade are the ones where somebody has put in the hours and put in the time and gone to a con and rolled dice and sat in the pungent smell of men enjoying themselves, and they've absolutely kicked the tires and they've put the legwork in, and that's why they have success. And the people who are just, well, I'm going to write this and then I'm going to put this out here, and it hasn't been played. It always shows. It always shows as soon as you get into the mechanics or you start to get into the setting, and you're just like, well, this was crafted by somebody who has only ever played D&D or whatever, and they just tried, but they never actually went to a con and said, "Would you like to try my game?" And it always shows. Sorry, I'm
very good.
No, sure. I noticed that, and one of the things that Kelsey did the first year that she attended conventions on her Victory Lap tour was she ran the same adventure over and over again. And I saw her run it twice at North Texas, and she ran it again when she was at Gamehole. And so, that became a lot the entry drug to a lot of people to Shadow Dark. And it was a real well-written adventure that covered all the basic stuff you want to cover. I mean, it didn't, it kind of did everything you want an introductory adventure to do. It was a great introduction to the system, a great introduction to, what she wanted to do. And I think, yes, more systems need to do that. They need to have that. What's the perfect intro adventure we can throw in here that's going to make everybody say, I played this game and it was so fun. I had such a great time playing, D&D 6.0 or whatever, because this adventure was great. And I want to see this adventure. I always remember the story about the first year we had North Texas. Matt Finch ran Swords and Wizardry, and he ran the Spire of Iron and Crystal, which I still is one of my favorite, OSR adventures of all time. And it was one of those, we played it, and I'm like, man, I've got to buy it. I got to figure out what was going on in there and what we didn't find and what's happening, because it was such a well-written introductory adventure for the system.
I think
once you have that, what you're saying about DCC, Jim, Harley Stroh was doing conventions one after another. He came to North Texas when we only had 300 people and was running funnels every single session, and that's what they did at every convention for years. They just kept doing it over and over and over.
By the time DCC was published, and I'm sorry, Jeff, Zach, I'm not trying to take away the spotlight on you here. I think that is the classic textbook example of you get in the trenches and you demonstrate it, you play test it, you tweak it. We often talk about how Mike Merrills doesn't get enough credit for 5th edition, because with 5th edition, all the playtest material that came back gave them this tremendous amount of data that they could correlate, and that they could actually see this is popular, but this is not. And every single touchstone, like they knew what worked, what didn't, what the majority of people craved, what the majority of people hated. And DCC exactly the same thing. We're going to go into the trenches and we're going to put in the time. And if you know anything about Harley, if he's at a convention, you want to game with him on Thursday because he'll be hoarse and have no voice by Friday afternoon. And it's the same with Brandon, with all of the great DCC judges and so on and so forth. And I'm a big fan of understanding that process, that too often we see things land that have not been play tested, right? And everybody forgets, Dungeons and Dragons came out of the evolution in Gary's basement. Like, he was running this game, and then it got to a bigger audience, and then more people were playing it, and more people were like writing him hate mail saying, well, why the hell do you have all these pole arms and I don't have it? Okay, Shaq, whatever. And that got better and better and better and better. And I think it's very easy to get caught up in the weeds and not realize we're in the golden age of role-playing games. We have tools to craft games that we never imagined. We have a zeitgeist so large that it encompasses and absorbs everything it comes in contact with. Whatever your interest is, you can probably find an RPG in the last decade that will touch on it, or what it will answer that itch, scratch that itch you have. And again, the better examples are all the ones that have been played, and they have been played a lot. David Beatty did. It's no longer called Down Darker Trails. It's called something else. But
Right.
David put 4 years into play testing before he took his Kickstarter live. And again, I think this is where success comes from. It comes from the time you spend getting your elbows into the depths of the engine and tweaking it and making it better and better.
Yeah. Chris in chat was asking if 5.5 does the same thing testing wise as 5th. I think the fast answer is no. 5th edition had D&D Next, which was like they gave out like a full adventure with pre-gens and all sorts of stuff, and you could like play through have the full experience of 5th edition and all the rules all at once. Whereas 5.5, while they showed you a lot of what was coming up and they had massive surveys, we never once got, here's an adventure, here's some monsters, here's all the pieces for you to actually go and play. Their pitch was, take all these new classes or take these new ideas that we have and integrate them into your 5th edition game, which, sure, but it is never, we have yet to have the opportunity to play actual 5.5 from soup to nuts. Yeah.
That's right. And that's exactly it. Is they sent out with 5.0, they sent out a kit where everything in that kit was measurable. And with 5.5, they did not. And it shows. It just shows.
Yeah.
Enough said. Sorry. I care not. Kron cares not for these things. To hell with them. Sorry. Sorry, it can't be a week without a Conan joke. I can't. Howard's birthday was a little while ago. It's still the doldrums of January. I need my hate to keep me warm through the next cold weeks. It is. So Zach and Jeff, like, we're at the end of almost 2 glorious hours. And what I'd like to ask you is, what is it you would like to say to people who might not have backed Dark Visions yet? Or what would you like to ask us? Like, we've asked you a lot of questions. Like hit us with your best shots, buds.
Well, I think how about we give I'll give the answer and then I'll come back with a question after Zach answers.
Sure.
So I think so what I want people to know is, even though this is a product for Shadow Dark, this is a very useful product really for any system. I know I kind of mentioned that before, but this is not, you could easily make this an OSC. You could make it to a lot of other things, or 5th edition. Now, depending on your system, it may vary on how much stuff you can directly port or use. But in general, the cult system, I think that Zach did is probably the very center core of this, and its utility is quite high. The spells are great, the classes are great, but I think the heart of this is the cults and the way they were developed and written.
Well, on my end, I'm going to go back to something Mike said earlier and say, hey, when you pick up Dark Visions,
Yeah.
you should definitely check out Fane of the Fly God that Jeff did a few years back. This Fane is so much fun. It's exactly the side of book
It's great.
I love the most.
Yeah.
It's weird, it's expansive, it's original, it's all the things I want, and you are not going to be disappointed in picking up a copy. So, Fane of the Fly God is where it's at.
I feel like I've been insulted. I'm weird and expanding. I just
And actually, I'm coming out with the new edition for that in 2025.
Oh,
It's going to
wow,
be greatly
cool.
expanded, and
Nice.
it's going to be DCCified, and it's going to have all new art. And I may try and really up the production values on the book itself. Maybe kind of fashioning it as a they say really going hog wild maybe with the paper. We'll see, but that's the goal for Fane in 2025.
okay. So what's your question for us?
Okay, so I guess the thing is you have interviewed a lot of different number of different publishers, people doing number of products. I guess what are your thoughts as far as the state of RPGs, independent RPGs, and the people that you have interviewed over the last year or so?
I will say a few things, and this is I'll tap dance through a minefield very carefully. We have been blessed since I've been on this show to have a number of unbelievably strong creators. We have had creators who have seen the tree but have not understood that they could actually have an entire forest. There's one in particular that I'm thinking of where they've written a module that's very clever and very interesting, but then after the show was over, we spent an hour talking about what that could be and what it could expand to be, right? That it was not just a drop of water in a bucket, but it could be a lot more than that. And that person's vision was very, very tight. I think we are in a golden age of third-party RPG products. Now, that said, the gold, there's a lot of 10 for every ounce of gold, right? And we see a lot of things that come and are successful, but for every project, for every creators that we have on, we have creators that we've had on where the project either barely funded or didn't fund. And this is very hard to watch, right? Because these are all labors of love. I think, again, I said this earlier, one of the nice things that I hear when you're talking about things is that oftentimes we see folks who are too creative or they're too business minded and they need to be somewhere in the middle, right? The pendulum has to swing back and forth, right? Creative has the great ideas, but there needs to be a voice of cost and conscience that says, whoa, hold on, how much is that going to cost? And too oftentimes I think creatives who do their own Kickstarters don't have that voice of cost and caution in the background whispering in their ear saying, hold on a second there, Sparky. We are not necessarily seeing new ideas, original ideas. More often than not, what we see things that we're already familiar with that are packaged in ways that are shiny and new and interesting, or they are combinations of things that make us all go, oh my gosh, I never thought of that, or ooh, that's interesting, or that takes the trope and it turns it sideways. We talked about the funnel, and truthfully, the funnel is one of the most gonzo joyous things about DCC. And if you had told me before DCC came out what a funnel was, I'd be like, huh? But the funnel works, and the funnel is a great introduction into that, because we all remember what it was like to have character sheets in the 70s and 80s where your guy died, I need another. Your guy died, I need another. Your guy died, I need two more. Great. All of that sort of swirls up. I love a healthy role-playing game community. I love great projects that are delivered and show up on people's doorsteps. I am often troubled by what I see on Kickstarter, and Eric and Mike and I have never once ever said, "Oh hell no, we're not having that person on the show."
Right.
Because I don't suffer fools well. we've had one guest on in the last 6 to 8 months who did not have a plan. They had hope, and hope is not a plan. And
Yes.
I don't play well with that, right? I believe that if you take people's money or you promise people things, you have to deliver on that, and you have to own up to that. And when people don't, I'm not happy. And when you spend an hour and a half stammering, or an hour stammering about how you have hope but you don't have a plan, I'm just done. I've checked out, and I have no time for that. I think the thing that I would say tonight has been just a really, really great show. And it's because the two of you are two really, really, really great creators who have a track record of success, who understand what you have to do. You have to get dirty to make this stuff. I can't express how happy I am that you've got the project where it is, right? Like when it crossed the 20,000% level, Jeff, did you go high five your spouse and we're like, oh my God, right? Like, I mean,
No,
call your parents and say, this role playing stuff isn't the devil, right? Like what?
I wish it did. I still feel very, I don't know. I still very, it doesn't feel real.
Oh, it'll feel real when you start fulfilling. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It'll feel really good.
I'm like, yeah, Jeff, the realness is gonna hit you. I know how you are. It's gonna hit when the books arrive.
That's right.
Not the money in the bank. But yeah.
Well, the thing is, I think part of me, it's sort of a protective thing. It's like, I cannot change. I mean, every Kickstarter I do, obviously I put a lot of effort and energy, and I think stuff we've learned here might help me have more successful Kickstarters in the future. But in general, I do realize that this is a gift, right? This is not, I don't know why. I mean, this worked out. I am very happy. We worked very hard. Zach's writing is very good. I mean, but this really is a gift, and I don't know that it'll ever repeat. I hope it does. I'm very thankful for it, but
you've laid the foundation for your next step, right? The next project may not be as big as this, but my guess is the next project that you do that is Shadow Dark related is going to have an inherent audience that is already invested emotionally, right?
Yeah, this is definitely right, and we just gained. I mean, and so the other thing is the Kickstarter itself is so. Kickstarting is basically my biggest form of marketing. So as I keep doing Kickstarters, everybody's been in a Kickstarter before, gets notification. I use the backer kit, communications. So it did bring in a lot of new people. And so that does add to the overall pool of an ecosystem of people that I will be then marketing to, which is, I hope will help add to the overall, but we'll see to what degree. But yes, I do. That is a very that is the not direct positive effect, but is definitely a positive effect of this successful Kickstarter.
That's right. And again, I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. Mike and Eric
I
are
just want to say something. Somebody had asked, Chris had asked, do you think there's many OSR, each one run differently enough? I think that's do we need another retro clone or OSR system, whatever? It doesn't matter. You're not necessarily dividing your audience. What I notice now is people aren't staying with one system exclusively.
Right.
They'll play a little OSC. They'll play Dragon Slayer. Everything has a different flavor, and it's great because it's like now you have 100 home campaigns out there to choose from. And the best part is you can choose what you like about each OSR system. Let's say I like the sledgehammer rules from Dragon Slayer. That's awesome that you can sledge in walls. But I like the saving throws from OSC, and I like that. You can mash that all together. The more, the better. I think that the thing that's disappointed me the last year is just the fact that first of all, WotC really dropping the ball on the 50th anniversary. And just the fact that the WotC drives the bus. I mean, if they're doing well, the entire community is doing well. And the fact that they just kind of fiddle-farted around last year means a lot of smaller companies weren't really sure which way to go, what to do. but yeah, I think the hobby right now, the third party system hobby is very healthy. You have Shadow Dark, but you have all these little fanzines that pop up like, hey, here's my rule system. It's 38 pages long, 48 pages long, and this is my way of playing. I mean, Bill Webb, the later this year, is going to put out the Necromancer's game, which is just basically here's my way I play. It's not a new system. It's just here's how I play. And you might pull some stuff out of there you want to use, you might not, whatever. I love that kind of stuff. And so I think the whole system right now, the whole hobby is very healthy in that regard. I don't think that we need to focus on one system. We don't need to be like Garibay, who's like, no, if you're not playing 5th edition, you're destroying everything we worked for. My God, you have to play 5th edition. We can't divide in these groups. No. It works great. I think it works great the way it is. And I think, yes, the more that's out there available, the better. I don't think they have to. I don't even know if they're competing at this point. Are they necessarily competing? I mean, just because you buy OSE doesn't mean you're not going to buy something else. You're not going to buy Shadow Dark, or you're not going to buy Dragon Slayer or whatever. So yeah, the last year I have a lot of contempt for WotC, but a lot of hope for the industry as a whole. I think it's doing really well.
Well, I think the other thing too, and I think all the points you make are great there, Mike. But I think also the ones that are going to be successful are the ones that produce a very tight experience. So Shadow Dark produces its own experience.
Yes.
And I think with DCC, that's a very defined experience. You'll never get that experience in any other system but DCC. So I think, even though that's not necessarily an OSR system, but I think there's plenty of room for people tailoring OSR mechanics in ways that are different or provide a very, very unique experience and a very focused experience.
I think one of the things that the analogy I always use when people are like, I've heard of Dungeons and Dragons, but I don't understand anything else after that. Okay. I always say, like, Dungeons and Dragons is vanilla ice cream, and Call of Cthulhu is like chocolate ice cream. And then everything else are all these amazing flavors you've only dreamt of when you were a kid, and then you become somebody and you're like, Ben and Jerry's makes what? Gelato comes in what? Right? Like suddenly you're never, vanilla is comfort food. Chocolate is like for birthday parties when you're a kid. But then there's all these, I mean, Jesus, as soon as I heard the word sorbet, I was in. I had no idea what the hell it was, but I was in, right? And this stuff just, it goes and it goes and it goes. And so I think we are in an uncertain time. I find a lot of the OSR movement, a lot of it is just this rampant chest beating, in defiance. It's rooted in defiance. And frankly, like, you're picking a fight you don't need to have, because there's all this other amazing stuff. And who are you really fighting, right? Like, I don't understand this, because the man is not trying to put you down. The man doesn't care. The man has moved on to other demographics and couldn't give a shit what you're doing. And so a lot of times I see the OSR, and the OSR is just, they're on a street corner and they're ready to have a fight with the Sharks or the Jets. And I got news for you. Nobody's driving by to have that fight. It's just not going to happen. And that's okay, because there's all these other wonderful systems out there that, gosh, if you just peek out from over the OSR fence, you might find something else that you would enjoy. And don't be like I went to Gary Con last year. I had heard about Shadow Dark, but I went to Gary Con last year, and Greyhawk Jesus put a copy of Shadow Dark in my hand and said, "You need to own this. I know what you like. I know what you buy. You need to own this." Okay. And I bought it, and I love it. I think it's amazing, right? But we have to have a reduction in the barriers to point of entry to get past the posturing. And I use that phrase very deliberately. It is a lot of posturing, right? Don't start from a place rooted in conflict. We're the scrappy rebels against the tyrannical Death Star of WotC. Oh, give me a break. They couldn't give a shit. There's all sorts of other stuff out there. Go play it and enjoy yourself, right? Have a good time, because at the end of the day, like Jeff and Zach, think about when you were kids. Think about when you were kids, and imagine going back in time and saying, you're going to do a thing and you're going to put it out, and people are going to pay you before it's ever even made into anything whole, and you're going to want to have $1,000 at the time this is done, and you're at $25,000, right? Like your 12-year-old minds would just explode.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and again, the absolute joy you have right now as adults is that in the game industry, you've created a successful project that is going to be embraced and loved and spoken of. And yes, the money's great, but come on, there's none of us that are retiring on our game company income. But the fact of the matter is that at the end of the day, the most measurable statistic you have as far as success goes is that other people have flocked to your product and will carry it forward. And that charge with a banner is just spectacular.
Thank you, Jim.
No, I really truly, like, you should go to your spouses or significant others or your family members, and you should break your arm, pat yourself on the back, and just say, like Zach, like really and truly, your dad and your mom, you should be like, I know you think they're all weird devil games, and I love you, but
No.
weird devil games, let me show you my success here. And
No, it's a great.
like, you're going to be like, honey, we're going to have to give up a stall in the garage for some pallets, but I want you to look at the good problem we have, not the bad problem.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
great. And we're at 2 hours, 15 minutes.
Yes.
And it has felt like an hour. This has been such a
It's
joy.
been
That's
really,
great.
it's
That's
been really
awesome.
good. Huge thank you to Agile Monk, who gifted a bunch of tavern memberships to a bunch of subscribers.
Yeah, that's
Time he's
awesome.
done
Thank
that.
you so much, Andrew.
So much thanks.
Thank you.
Mike, Jim, we're gonna have to figure out what the actual requirements are to win this 10 Cars Tavern sign.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's so
that's
nice.
And
another
is
nice
this the
man.
second prize, by the way? Is the 10 Cars toilet like for number 2?
Oh, isn't that the Lanasa Award? Isn't that what? Oh,
Yeah, maybe it's an award that doesn't go to anybody particular. Yeah, we got
Oh, by the way, by the way, while we were on tonight, I talked to one
Uh-huh.
Mr. Skeeter Green, and he will be coming on either next
Awesome.
week
Oh
or the
my
week
God.
after.
let's put the
So
link. Wait.
yeah, I
You
know
gotta
it's
put the
shocking,
link to the Kickstarter in the
absolutely
chat so
shocking.
people can follow it and go back to the project. I
right,
really want
folks.
this to
Folks,
try to
the
Kickstarter.
link is on the bottom of the screen for anybody who has not seen it yet.
Yeah, Skeeter has a project coming up for Kickstarter, and we will have him on the show. And if you've been on the show with Skeeter before, if you think that we're unfiltered, oh my. You don't know what unfiltered is till you get Mr. Skeeter Green on the show, and he's got a head of steam. So yeah, we'll have him on the next few weeks. That should be interesting.
I just believe that I wasn't asked to describe
That's all
the
I've
GCC
got,
community.
guys.
I have so many adjectives. It's just going to be too much fun.
Yeah, nearly 25K.
Don't back it. Come on, folks. Let's get to 25 tonight. They're not going to be like, I'm not going back to
I
that
backed
crap.
it already. I'll back it again. I'll back it again.
God, hold on a second.
I'm already back.
Yeah, hold on. I'm working on it. I'm working on
You're
it.
preaching to the choir, sir. You're preaching to the choir.
I'm trying. Hold on. I keep it up there. Hold on. Let me get on here 1 second. I got this. DARKHAVEN. Thank God I can spell. Where to go? No, that's not it. I love this. No. Oh God, never mind. All right, I'll have to do it later. They got to go to bed. It's been on too late.
Yes, we must
All right.
let's close up shop here.
All right, folks. Well, huge thank you to Jeff and Zach for joining us tonight. It's been a blast.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
no, definitely.
Yeah.
Mike doesn't get my thanks. He knows that.
I watched your
You're
show
welcome to
Tuesday
join.
afternoon.
Yeah, folks, there's
when
going to be an irregular weekday live stream. Day will change depending on life circumstances, but it will be at 1 o'clock. So if you're across the pond or looking to kill time at work, apparently a lot of people watching from work. don't know how that works. How you can actually watch a live stream at work and participate. God bless you. But we'll be doing that once a week for our community. Other than that, live streams the next couple of nights. I think I'm doing like 10 days straight of live. Thank you all.
Wow.
And again, thank you to Agile Monk for gifting those subs. Really appreciate it. Be safe, be well, God bless, roll the dice, roll them well. Back to Kickstarter, link on the bottom of the screen. 10 Cards Dash Tavern, .goon/darkviz. Okay? We'll catch you all later.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Down
Later.
comes in at the very end. You